I woke up to the sound of my name being mispronounced. Soft, clinical, stripped of affection. The ceiling above me was too white, too clean. The kind of white that pretends nothing bad ever happens underneath it. Machines hummed beside my bed, breathing for me, counting for me, deciding how long I was allowed to stay. I didn't open my eyes, not yet. Footsteps stopped near my bed. Rubber soles, a pause, papers rustling. Then my father's voice, low, urgent, familiar in the way a knife is familiar once it's already inside you. "Doctor, we don't have time." My heart stuttered. Not from fear, from recognition. That tone meant decisions were being made without me, about me. Another voice replied, older, tired. "She's not cleared. She was in a car accident. There are protocols." My mother exhaled sharply. I could hear her crossing her arms. I'd known that sound since childhood. It was the sound she made when something was inconvenient. "Our son is dying," she said. "You said she's a match?" Silence. Then the word that cracked something open inside my chest. "Yes." I felt it then, the truth. Not fully formed, but circling, like a predator testing the fence. My father leaned closer. I could smell his cologne. The same one he wore to my graduations, my birthdays, my hospital visits. "Take her organ," he said. "Save him. Do it now." My breath caught. Still, I didn't move. I lay there perfectly still because some instinct older than fear told me this moment mattered, that if I revealed myself now, I'd lose something I could never get back. The doctor hesitated. I heard it in the way his pen stopped scratching. "She's awake?" he asked quietly. "No," my mother said immediately, too fast, too certain. Then she added, colder than the metal rails of my bed, "She's just a burden anyway." There it was, not shouted, not dramatic, just filed away, like a fact, like my existence had finally found its proper label. Burden. I felt my pulse in my ears, loud, furious, alive. They talked numbers after that. Percentages, risks, legal loopholes, consent forms I had apparently already signed, or would have if I'd been conscious, or compliant, or loved. I kept my eyes closed. I listened. I memorized every word, because somewhere between my mother's indifference and my father's desperation, something inside me stitched itself back together wrong, not broken, rewired. They thought I was unconscious. They thought I was expendable. They had no idea I was awake, and they had absolutely no idea what I was about to do new. I stayed still long after they left, long after the door whispered shut, long after the machines returned to their steady, indifferent rhythm. Inside me, something screamed, but my body didn't flinch. That was the first lesson I relearned in that bed. Silence survives longer than truth. Hours passed, or minutes. Time was syrup thick in that room. Nurses came and went. Someone checked my vitals. Someone adjusted a drip. No one looked at my face long enough to notice the tension holding my eyelids shut. I replayed my mother's words again and again. "She's just a burden anyway." Not said in anger, not said in grief. Said the way you talk about old furniture you're finally ready to throw out. I'd spent my life trying to be light enough, useful enough, quiet enough. I cooked when she was tired. I gave up opportunities so my brother could have more. I told myself love was sacrifice because that was the only version offered to me. Lying there, I understood something with terrifying clarity. This wasn't sudden. This was just the first time they said it out loud. Later, when the doctor returned alone, I opened my eyes. Slowly, deliberately, as if waking from a dream I had already analyzed and categorized. He froze. "You're awake," he said. "Yes." My voice didn't shake. That surprised him. It surprised me too. "How long?" he asked. "Long enough?" He swallowed. Guilt flickered across his face, brief and useless. "You understand the situation," he began. I nodded. "My brother needs a transplant." "Yes." "You're compatible." "Yes." "There are risks." I almost laughed. Instead, I asked, "Did they say anything else?" He hesitated. Then quietly, "Your mother believes your quality of life wouldn't be significantly reduced." I stared at the ceiling. I wondered how many times she'd practiced saying that sentence in her head. "I need time," I said. He shook his head. We don't have... I need time, I repeated. Something in my tone must have landed. He nodded once and left. That night I didn't sleep, I thought. I thought about childhood photos where I stood slightly outside the frame, about birthdays celebrated late because my brother had exams, about every time I was praised for being understanding. Understanding is a useful word. It sounds kind. It trains you to accept erasure with a smile. By morning, I had made a decision, not an emotional one, a precise one. If they wanted to take something from me, they would have to give me something first. Control, consent, and the truth. I asked for my phone. I asked for my records. I asked for a different doctor. And I began doing what I'd always done best. Watching, listening, and planning. I became agreeable. That was my camouflage. I nodded when nurses spoke. I thanked doctors. I let my parents believe the sedatives had softened me into compliance. Inside, I was razor-focused. The first thing I asked for was my medical file. Casual, curious, like a patient trying to understand her own body. The transplant coordinator hesitated, then smiled, then handed it over. People always underestimate politeness. I read everything. Blood work, compatibility markers, consent forms dated before the accident. My signature, scanned, cropped, placed. I stared at it for a long time. It was perfect. Too perfect. I'd never signed anything like that, which meant someone had. For me, I requested the hospital's legal liaison next, framed it as anxiety, trauma response. They explained consent laws, emergency clauses, family authority. Your parents are your next of kin, she said gently. They're allowed to decide if I can't, I finished. She nodded. I smiled. Inside, I noted the exact phrasing. If I can't, that conditional mattered. Next, I asked for a psych evaluation. They didn't question it. Patients who almost die are allowed to be afraid. The psychologist asked me how I felt about my family. I told her the truth. They love my brother very much. She waited for more. I didn't give it. Over the next 2 days, I watched my parents. My father avoided my eyes, always busy, always on calls. My mother sat by my bed, scrolling through her phone, telling me how brave I was. Brave, another word used to disguise sacrifice. They spoke about my brother constantly, his pain, his fear, his future. They never asked about mine. Not once. At night, when the ward quieted, I borrowed a nurse's terminal. A small favor, a practiced smile. I accessed internal logs. Consent timestamps, user IDs, IP addresses. It wasn't difficult. The form had been submitted from my father's email. While I was unconscious, I saved copies. Then I requested my brother's records. That took longer, required justification. I used genetics, family history, concern. What I found made my fingers go cold. His condition wasn't sudden. They'd known for months. Long before my accident. Long before I was admitted. Which meant this. This wasn't desperation. It was opportunity. I replayed the accident in my head. The night, the road, the truck that ran the red light. Too convenient. I pulled the police report. The driver was uninsured, disappeared. Witness statements were vague, cameras malfunctioned. Nothing conclusive, but doubt is a seed, and it had been planted carefully. By the third day, I understood the shape of the truth. I wasn't being asked to save my brother. I was being harvested, planned, prepared, signed away. I lay back in my bed, listening to my mother talk about prayers and miracles, and I realized something calm and terrible. They believed I would do this willingly, because they had spent my entire life. The results came in at 3:17 a.m. Hospitals have a different kind of silence at that hour. Not peaceful. Suspended. The air feels like it's waiting for permission to move. I was awake. Of course I was. The nurse placed the envelope on my tray without a word. No sympathy, no curiosity, just paper-changing hands. I didn't open it right away. I stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. Pale, scarred, alive in a way I hadn't been before. When I finally opened the envelope, I did it slowly. DNA analysis, expanded compatibility report. I read the conclusion first. Full genetic match, parent-child relationship confirmed. For me, not for him. I went back, line by line, marker by marker. My brother and I shared only one parent, our father. My mother, she wasn't his. which meant the illness, the inheritance, the urgency. It wasn't random. It wasn't fate. It was her guilt. Suddenly, the favoritism made sense. The protection, the obsession, the way she'd watched him like a debt that could never be repaid. She hadn't just married into this family. She'd brought her sin with her. I asked to see her that morning. Alone, she arrived irritated, tired, still wearing the same perfume she'd worn my entire life. "You look better," she said. "That's a sign." I handed her the report. No explanation, no accusation, just paper. She read it once, then again. Her fingers began to tremble. "What is this?" she whispered. "A confirmation," I said. She looked up at me, eyes wide, lips parted. I watched her realize it, that I knew. That I had always been the expendable one because I was proof. She tried to speak, failed, swallowed. "You don't understand," she said finally. "I was young, I was scared." I nodded. "I was a child," I replied. She reached for my hand. I pulled it back. The door opened behind her. My father stood there. I turned the report toward him. He didn't need to read it. He saw her face. That was enough. "What did you do?" he asked her quietly. She collapsed into a chair. The room filled with the sound of something breaking. Not glass, illusions. "I did what I had to," she said. "He needed me." My father looked at me then. Really looked, for the first time in years. "You knew?" he asked. "Yes." "How long? Since you decided I was spare parts?" He flinched. "Good." They begged after that. Not loudly, softly, strategically. They spoke about family, love, survival. I listened. Then I stood up. "My consent is withdrawn," I said. "Formally, legally, permanently." The words landed like a verdict. My mother screamed. The machines kept humming, and for the first time, I felt nothing. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't explain myself again. That's the mistake people make when they finally have power. They think it needs volume. It doesn't. Power is procedural. I asked for the hospital administrator, then legal, then ethics. All routine, all calm. I handed them copies. The forged consent, the timestamps, the DNA report, the audio recording I'd made the night before, my parents' voices clear as glass. "Take her organ, save him, do it now. She's just a burden anyway." No one interrupted. That silence was different from the one in my room. This one meant consequences. My father tried once more. "Please," he said, "he's still our son." I looked at him. "And I'm still your daughter." The sentence wasn't emotional. It was surgical. He didn't have an answer for it. By noon, the transplant was canceled. By evening, the hospital filed a report. By morning, my parents were no longer allowed to make any decisions on my behalf. My mother sat in the corner of the room, hollowed out. She kept whispering my brother's name like a prayer that had lost its God. When she finally looked at me, her eyes weren't angry. They were afraid. "What happens now?" she asked. I smiled. "Not kindly." "Now," I said, "you tell him the truth." Her breath hitched. "You owe him that," I added, "before he hears it from someone else." My father's shoulders sagged. They left an hour later, together, but not united. I watched through the glass as they argued in the hallway, hands waving, faces tight, years unraveling in real time. I imagined the conversation that would follow, the confession, the collapse, the way my brother would look at her and finally see the crack in the mirror. I wouldn't be there for it. That was the final cut. I signed my discharge papers that afternoon, transferred guardianship, revoked access, changed emergency contacts. I erased myself from their authority with clean lines and black ink. As I walked out of the hospital, the sun hit my face. Too bright, almost offensive. I paused. Not because I was unsure, because I wanted to remember the feeling. The exact moment I chose myself. Behind me, a family was imploding. Ahead of me, nothing was promised. And for the first time in my life, that felt like freedom. I never went back. Not to the house. Not to the hospital room where my name had been reduced to a resource. Not to the version of myself that believed love was something you earned by disappearing. I moved quietly. New number, new address, new doctors who spoke to me, not over me. My body healed the way bodies do. Slowly, imperfectly, honestly. What mattered more was the silence that followed me everywhere. No calls, no apologies, no explanations I hadn't already dissected and buried. Once, months later, a letter arrived. My father's handwriting. I didn't open it. Some truths don't need closure. They just need distance. I heard through someone else that my brother survived. Another donor. Another miracle. Good. That was never my responsibility. What stayed with me wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the precision of it. The planning. The ease with which they had rewritten my life into something disposable. People like to believe monsters announce themselves. They don't. They raise you. They feed you. They tell you you're strong when what they mean is useful. Sometimes, late at night, I touch the scar on my side. Not with anger, with acknowledgement. It's proof that I was cut open, that I was nearly erased, that I chose not to be. I don't forgive them. Forgiveness suggests a future I no longer want. What I have instead is better. Clarity. They taught me my value by trying to take it. I kept it. And I walked away carrying something they will never have again. Access to me. Power doesn't announce itself when it arrives. It settles, quietly, like dust after a demolition. I learned that in the weeks after I disappeared from their lives. No dramatic fallout reached me directly. No confrontations in parking lots. No tearful voicemails breaking through my new number. Just absence. And absence, I realized, was its own kind of punishment. But I wasn't done yet. Walking away is survival. Leaving evidence behind is mercy. I wanted something cleaner. Permanent. I met with a lawyer I paid in cash. No shared networks. No traceable referrals. She didn't ask why my hands shook when I handed over the folder. She didn't ask why the documents were already color-coded. She just nodded and said, "This is thorough." Forgery, coercion, medical fraud, intent to cause grievous harm, all documented, all time-stamped, all undeniable. We didn't file charges, not yet. Instead, she sent notices. Hospitals hate liability more than they love ethics. Within a month, my parents' names were flagged in 3 medical systems, their authority revoked, their credibility questioned. My father was asked to step down from a committee he'd chaired for years. Quietly, respectfully, publicly unexplained. My mother lost something subtler. People stopped trusting her stories. They listened, and then they checked. The kind of damage that doesn't heal. One evening, months later, I ran into her. By accident. A grocery store. Frozen aisle. Harsh lighting. She looked smaller. Older. She said my name like it was something fragile. I didn't stop walking. "I just wanted you to know," she said behind me, voice cracking. "I think about it every day." I paused. Not for her. For me? I don't, I said. That wasn't cruelty. That was truth. I left her standing there, surrounded by choices she could no longer return. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. I breathed it in. Deep, steady. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is reactive. This was control. I don't tell this story anymore. Not to friends. Not to doctors. Not to people who confuse curiosity with concern. It lives where it belongs now, contained, controlled, in the past. My life is ordinary in ways that once felt impossible. I choose what I eat. I choose where I live. I choose who is allowed to touch me, know me, speak my name. That is what freedom looks like when you've had it taken. Sometimes people ask why I never reconciled. They say things like alpha time heals, or family is complicated, or they did what they thought was right. I let them talk. Because explaining would require me to step back into a room I burned down for a reason. I don't hate my parents. Hate keeps a door open. What I feel is quieter than that. Final. They thought my body was the price of their mistake. They thought my silence meant consent. They thought love could be extracted under anesthesia. They were wrong. I survived not because I was strong, but because I woke up. And once you wake up to the truth, you don't owe anyone your sleep again. The scar on my body faded. The one inside me didn't. It hardened. And that hardness became something useful. A boundary. A line no one crosses anymore. I wasn't saved that day in the hospital. I saved myself. And the people who tried to carve me open, they live with that knowledge. Every day, in every quiet moment. That's enough.